We're live.
And we are live. It is 9 p.m. on Wednesday night. My name is Rabbi Efrem Goldberg. I'm the host of Behind the Bima, together with our panelists, Rabbi Philip Moskowitz, Rabbi Josh Broide, and we are here to take you
behind the Bima.
Behind the Bima. Thank you so much for being with us again tonight. We got another great program. It's hard to believe, fellas. This is episode 13. Episode 13 we've been doing this.
Wow.
What began as coffee talk to be able to just hopefully see some people and be seen by people has morphed into a podcast that's climbing the charts, and that we have some really distinguished guests. Tonight's guest is prominent, esteemed, and we're really excited to be able to talk to him. Looking forward to it.
Amazing.
We're still having fun doing it. That's the most important part.
We're still having a blast, and it's hard to believe there are actually still people who are listening. And as long as they're listening, maybe even after they stop listening, we're going to keep doing it because we're having a blast. So why don't we jump right into it and thank, first of all, our sponsor for tonight, our dear friend Sal Abadi. Sal is a second-time sponsor. It's our second-time sponsor, though we do have a long list of other people. We snuck Sal in because of his loyalty to us. Sal, on behalf of his incredible company called Oracle Senior Home Care. So if you know anyone, a family member, a neighbor, someone in need of home health care, a certified nursing assistant, home health aide to assist you. They specialize in caring for patients with dementia, Alzheimer's. They provide care in a home, in a hospital, in all kinds of facilities. Long-term insurance is accepted. But here's the amazing thing. Sal Abadi will literally hold the family's hand. He'll be there. He'll take care. He is not just a job. This is a calling. He's really there for the family. And mention Behind the Bima. I hope you don't need these services. He hopes you don't need these services. But mention Behind the Bima, first 4 hours of service free. That's a big value.
Oh.
First 4 hours of service free. Mentioned Behind the Bima. You can get a hold of Sal 561-212-7911. So I hope Sal's okay that I gave out a cell phone, but 561-212-7911. Our dear friend Sal Abadi. Sal, thank you so much for your sponsorship tonight.
Second
and your
sponsorship.
Always. So I want to jump into something exciting I got in the mail yesterday. Ezra Diamond, wonderful young member of our community, just celebrated his bar mitzvah. Touch and go. Was it going to be outside their home? Was it going to be in the shul? Was it going to be outdoors, indoors? How would it work out? Last minute was the first Shabbos. The shul was back open. Ezra, all that preparation, all that hard work of preparing the laning paid off. Did it indoors. It was beautiful. It was really amazing. So Yocheved and I gave him a little gift because we think it's important, even during coronavirus, for people who feel invisible. Unlike Rabbi Moskowitz, we think it's important. People deserve to celebrate and get gifts. Send him a little gift, and we got Ezra Diamond's
TaraandKalev.com.
It's actually, what is it again? Is that right?
Rabbi Goldberg.
TaraandKalev.com.
Have
Dr. Groopman. We're going to jump right in. Dr. Groopman, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
It's a pleasure.
It's such a great honor. So many times we've tried to welcome you to our community and it never worked out. And so the gift of technology, we're able to host you virtually. And that is such a bracha, such a blessing and opportunity. Let me introduce you to my colleagues and friends, Rabbi Philip Moskowitz, who I believe you knew his late father. He'll mention that in a moment. And Rabbi Josh Broide as well. And we're all honored to welcome you to our program Behind the Bima tonight. Thank you for being
fans.
It's great to see you.
So first of all,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Groopman, hosting you is an honor, not only because of course, your incredible contributions in the field of medicine and in literature and commentary of what's going on in the world. You've really inspired so many with your best-selling books and your countless articles. And of course, most of all, with your very loving care that you provide as a physician. But for me personally, this is a great privilege and pleasure because, of course, we are family. Indirectly through my wife, but I consider ourselves family.
I feel bonded in that way. Yes.
And
your father-in-law is very close, Robbie Brookstein, and his lovely wife, and now your wife. So there you are.
Absolutely. And they often talk about you and quote you. And I want to just, let's see if we can screen share for one moment. We'll take a brief moment even before we begin. There we go. If you see that picture, I believe that captures, that captures the relationship. Can you see that, Dr. Groopman?
Yes, I do. There's my great-grandmother.
There it is. This is a famous picture from Bushtana. We are Einiklach. We are the children of the Pishtana Rebbe, a great distinction. And you, my wife Yocheved, and you are third cousins, evidenced by this picture. In the middle are the matriarch and patriarch of the family. Moshe Brookstein and his wife. And here, Dr. Groopman, are your great-grandparents. And
Yes.
just above Moshe Brookstein are Yocheved's great-grandparents and also another great-grandmother of hers. The other great-grandfather was not in Bush enough for this family reunion. And there in the right upper corner is Yocheved's grandmother, which Yocheved looks a little bit like. Really, I see some resemblance from my own children. So this picture firmly establishes the relationship between Yocheved, between the Brooksteins, and Dr. Groopman, between you. So it's a great privilege, a great honor to have you on our program.
That picture is in my office in my laboratory.
Wow, that's fantastic. It's really an amazing thing. I think it's only because of your great-grandparents who lived in America but had gone back to visit that they actually have that picture, because everyone else was really wiped out in the war.
Exactly. Everyone else was deported in 44, and then my great-grandmother and grandmother and great-grandfather, Alav Shalom, brought them, the survivors, over after the war. And I actually learned from Eliezer Brookstein that my grandfather, Alav Shalom, had access to penicillin and saved the life of his mother after the war because she had pneumonia. And it was impossible to get the antibiotic, and he was able to get it and get it to the DP camp in Germany.
That's amazing. So you have a family legacy of medicine and treatment of others and of care. So for those of our listeners, I don't think there's anyone who doesn't know who you are, Dr. Groopman, but let me just remind them nonetheless. Dr. Groopman is a frequent contributor, a writer for the New Yorker, chair of medicine at Harvard Medical School, chief of experimental medicine at Beth Israel Medical Center, author of 5 best-selling books, including How Doctors Think, The Anatomy of Hope, Second Opinions, and of others. And you've made an enormous contribution in your field and beyond, and you're a perfect person for us to speak to about so many things. And while we're tempted to jump in and ask you your opinion about coronavirus and maybe comment on the spike we seem to be experiencing here in Florida and South Florida in particular, maybe we'll come back to that, because people don't necessarily want to hear about coronavirus. So instead, maybe we'll just jump in with a different question, which is, how does your Judaism inform your humanism, your practice of medicine? All of your writings, all of your contributions, your books, everything that you've done, where does your Judaism, your Jewish ideals, your Jewish values, your Jewish observance contribute to it?
I think there's a very strong tradition in Judaism embodied, particularly in the Rambam, to combine appreciation and understanding of science as a gift from Hashem. Wisdom, we say Chachma, Bina, the scale, wisdom, knowledge, discernment, all of those are involved in gaining scientific information. And at the same time, there's a sense of humility, that we don't know everything in the world, that there are things beyond our understanding, and that we have to have a sense of hope and faith, which are also essential, I think, in Judaism, to have a sense of forces and powers that are beyond that of man. So I think those two things are very strong, and often people believe there's a conflict between science and religion or science and faith. And I think we look at really giants in our tradition, like the Rambam, who saw no conflict between that. And actually, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was trained as an engineer in Europe before the war, and then worked at the Brooklyn Navy Yards as an engineer, also saw no conflict between science and faith. So I think those two things are very powerful in terms of what drives me as a researcher and as a doctor.
Interesting. Tonight's the Lubavitcher Rebbe's yurtzeit, actually, so appropriate that he was mentioned. Now, I understand that you were close to the Boston Rebbe in Boston.
Yes, very much so, and helped him with patients who came up to Boston for second opinions, and often actually more from a medical point of view, complex halachic issues. A pregnant woman I remember from the community in Yerushalayim who had a very severe infection with a virus that's destructive to a fetus. And there was a big machlochet about the child and the birth and so on. So I helped inform from a scientific point of view. And of course, the halachic decisions were left to the Rabbanim.
Interesting. Rabbi Moskowitz.
Yes.
And of course, the Boston Rebbe was instrumental with Raphael International, right? An organization that helped people from around the world who came for medical treatment in Boston.
Very much, Raphael, which is still very, very active and vibrant in the community here.
So you deal with, first of all, it's a real honor to have you here. And growing up in Boston and my father being a physician in the community, obviously your name was very familiar to me. And my father and you shared a mutual acquaintance, Dr. Michael Osband.
Yes.
And Dr. Osband, who we were very close with, he used to have a Kiddush cup that he used every Shabbos. And it was a Kiddush cup that was given to him by a patient of his. He was an oncologist who ultimately passed away. And that was his way of remembering the patient. And I remember my mother and him always having this debate about how do you maintain positivity when you're an oncologist, when you're dealing with cancer patients all day long. And I know that's something you talk about and you write about. What's your perspective on that? You're dealing with the sickest of patients. You're doing experimental treatments. How do you maintain your positivity, your optimism, that faith, even when seeing the darkest moments for people come through your doors?
Well, I think that there are three things. One is that sometimes the tumor doesn't read the textbook. There's a professor of biology at Harvard named Stephen Jay Gould, who wrote an essay called "The Median is Not the Message." And he actually became like a Baal Shuvah towards the end of his life. He developed cancer, and doctors told him he was going to die in 6 months. He lived 11 years, and he lived very high quality of life. And he realized as a biologist that there's a distribution in every biological system as he saw it, and people are, to him, biological systems, where you can't predict with certainty the outcome. So there's always uncertainty. So that's one way to maintain true hope from a scientific point of view. The other is, thankfully, we make progress. You can't predict progress, but there is progress. You look at diseases like testicular cancer that were uniformly fatal, and then people like Lance Armstrong or Jimmy Carter, who had melanoma.
Or Philip Moskowitz. I had 5 years ago. So
yes,
I had testicular cancer 5 years ago.
You did.
So.
Yeah, and people who ordinarily, and then there were drugs like cisplatin came and other drugs, and they were cured. And I saw the first patients with the treatment. And it was a ness. It was a miracle to see something like this. Or Jimmy Carter with melanoma, the way Lance Armstrong had brain metastases and Carter had brain metastases from melanoma. This would be thought of as hopeless. And now it can be cured. So science, you can't predict it, but it does change. It makes miracles. And the other, I think, is when we think about the Mishaberach prayer, it's refuat nefesh, refuat guf. Now, the question is, why does nefesh precede guf? And some people say, well, you need the nefesh to help the guf and so on. But the truth is that ultimately the guf cannot be cured for any of us because we're all mortal. But I do believe that we always have hope for the nefesh, that to the very last moment, there is a reason to live. There's a reason to hope. There's a reason to endure, because there are things with our nefesh that we can reconcile, that we can improve, that we can find peace and fullness, to be shalem in that way. And so for people whom I'm caring for, I always strive for cure and improvement and to stay ahead of the cancer. But if there does come a time when the guf cannot be cured and there is nothing immediate, there's always the nefesh to address.
You tell a story in one of your books about a woman who you had run out of medical options, and you apologized to her. She understood, at least implied in your voice, and she said you do still have something to give, the medicine of friendship and love. And I've quoted that and had a big impact on me. It supports the Talmudic statement that every person who visits a sick person takes away a part of their illness, but that too has medicinal value, right? The friendship, the love.
Absolutely. So this was a story, and actually the wife of a minister who I was caring for, and I said, I have nothing more to give you. And she said, no, you're wrong. You have the medicine of friendship. You have the medicine of affection. And I think, when we think about it, being, as you say, being present, being there, as hard as it can be sometimes, because it is difficult. It is frightening for people who are healthy and so on, to be with someone who can be so sick, but it's incumbent upon us. And I think that this is one of the great sources in our tradition that pushes us for Bikur Cholim. And it's through Abraham Avinu from the very earliest Jew, basically, to understand that this is a part of our tradition and a part of really what makes Kedusha.
That's an amazing answer, and it's really inspiring for anyone who's a caring, thoughtful human being, not only people in the medical field. I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you a question that indirectly addresses coronavirus, the pandemic, is a little bigger than that. And one of the themes of your books, one of the contributions of your scholarship is about empowering patients and the limitations on doctors' expertise. And I guess we're feeling that very acutely right now because every expert seems to be stripped of their expertise. What they said yesterday is true. Tomorrow is not true. They change the truth every day. It adapts. It conforms. It has humbled or should humble all of us. And again, the experts seem like they're not experts. The amateurs, I don't think, have more of an expertise, but sometimes can feel like they do. So how does this whole pandemic and how does the lack of expertise and the fact that every day, surface, it can transmit on surface? No, it can't. Asymptomatic children are the biggest carriers? No, they're not. Temperature is an indicator? No, 2/3 of people who didn't have temperature when they had. Every day it's changing, and therefore we're left throwing up our hands with such uncertainty, doubt, not understanding. And how does what's happening now fit into your theory and your contribution in this area?
Well, I think we talked a little before, first of all, about being a nav, that you really have to be humble in terms of thinking about things and realizing that there's a high level of uncertainty, particularly with regard to an evolving disease. So unfortunately, with the understandable sort of pressure to get out information, people are putting out information prematurely. And sometimes it comes from people who are, quote, experts. Sometimes it comes from some of the most esteemed journals like the New England Journal and the Lancet, which then find out that they've been hoodwinked by prominent researchers who got data that was really flawed, and therefore that undermines the credibility of what's published. And then there's unfortunately now websites where information is presented without it being rigorously reviewed and statistically analyzed and so on. And I think the media also plays to this because it does, first of all, everyone wants a headline and an exciting headline. And it's also become politicized, both on the right and on the left. So to me, science doesn't care whether you like President Trump or you don't like President Trump. It's irrelevant. It should be what is emet, what is emes, basically. And that takes time to figure out. And it's better to do things in a careful, rigorous way. My own sort of approach is really a pekuach nefesh approach. And that is that this is a serious virus. There is no doubt about it. I don't know if you know from your from your father-in-law that we have two relatives who were extremely ill with this. Both of them, Baruch Hashem, made it through. One was almost dead. The other one was almost on a ventilator. Both of them are very healthy people. They don't have underlying conditions. They're not morbidly obese. They don't, nothing like that. So this can hit anyone. You look at kids now with these reports of this inflammatory syndrome, Kawasaki's. So we have to know what we don't know. And my own feeling is that we really do need to pay serious attention to this and not be cavalier about it. So do I accept everything that's published? Absolutely not. Do I dismiss things because they come from the right or the left? No, I have an objective, open mind. On the other hand, from a public health point of view, you can see what's happening by prematurely opening. I mean, and it's not a question of more testing. You don't put people in the hospital in Texas, in the ICUs, or in Florida, in Miami, which is now almost to the point of saturation, because you're testing more people. They're getting sick. And in fact, they're younger people, because they're the ones who were partying at the beach and spring, break and so on. So my own feeling is we don't know a lot of things, but I really believe that from a pekuach nefesh point of view, because this does kill people, and we have no immunity against this. We haven't seen this virus before. It's not influenza. It's not other coronaviruses. We need to be extra cautious. And that's how I am with my patients. I want them to live. And I'd rather be extra cautious and then later tack back than to be glib or cavalier and then see them get very sick and, God forbid, die.
But do you think the change of the expertise or the change of the experts' opinions is going to reinforce or promote cynicism and skepticism from patients that maybe they don't really know more?
Yes, I think that the undermining of expertise is a big problem throughout, and the scientific establishment has been undermined, partly its own fault, partly hubris, in that a lot of people want to be first. Okay, so it's a big yichus thing. I want to be first. I want to get out there. I want to show I'm the big guy, and they put out information without being careful. The two papers that got withdrawn from the New England Journal and from Lancet came from Harvard. So you can't get more yichus than that in the medical establishment, not just because I'm there, but and they were wrong. They were wrong. They shouldn't have been. And it's sloppy. So, in every other way, it's like, Moshe Habatal, who you probably know in Israel with Avishai Margalit, he said the ultimate avodah zarah, is the ego. And so on. And that, the ego that's driving this on the scientific establishment. So they're undermining themselves. On the other hand, there is a very bad part of the political establishment that is undermining the science and saying there is no truth, there is no reality, there is no, that this is all nonsense, and that's wrong too.
Do you think, and I'll let someone else ask a question in a moment, but have you seen through your career, do you think doctors have more humility or less humility than they used to?
That's a tough one. I think that they have a changing humility. So there was a joke when I was in my training about certain doctors. They would say, not always right, but never in doubt. Okay. So that was more about individual patients. Now what we have is what is called system hubris. So if you look at healthcare reform, which my wife and I wrote a lot of articles in the Wall Street Journal and other places criticizing a lot of the health reforms that were being proposed because they were sort of a blunt instrument and disregarded the individual patient. There was enormous hubris about how to change medicine in a way that they made it into a factory. And they were very arrogant about it. And they completely dismissed the importance of the individual patient and the individual doctor. So there was a shift in hubris. You had certain individual physicians who were very hubristic, and then you had these manager type physicians who were convinced that they were like CEOs of big corporations and they knew everything about how to change the world. And it turned out to be a disaster.
Did you get pushback from doctors from your books that encourage patients to be more empowered and to challenge their doctors, get second opinions?
We got, surprisingly, most of the physicians were pretty positive because we admitted our own errors, and it was sort of like Ashamnu Bagadnu. But we got a lot of pushback from the system guys. There's a whole mantra now of Toyota that the hospital should run like a Toyota car plant. And my wife and I wrote a article in the New England Journal about what's called Taylorism. I don't know if you know this, there was a guy who said everyone should work like in a factory. His name was Taylor. And you should work at maximum efficiency and this and that. And, and this is what we wrote about. And that caused enormous blowback because we wrote that people aren't automobiles. Or if they are, they're used cars. And each one is different.
That's great.
You write a lot about the patient perspective and bridging the gap between patient and doctor. I'm curious your thoughts about telemedicine and how you think that's going to change medicine going forward. Certainly that has an impact on the dynamic I'm on the patient side, you're on the physician side, and it's a lot less personal, right? You're not sitting there with the doctor. There's a certain empathy that's communicated when you're in a room together with someone. Is that here to stay? Is that a good change for us, the patients? Is that a bad change for us, the patients? How do you think that will impact the average person altogether?
Right. I think it's mixed. My wife is an endocrinologist, and she said that the positive is that she has much more freedom to spend as much time as she wants with her patients in telemedicine, because she's not in the clinic where they're telling her you have to see people every 10, 12 minutes or whatever it is. She said that it only really works when people aren't very ill and when she knows who the person is. For people who have cancer or other very serious problems, or people that she cares for who are very ill, you need to see them and so on. Telemedicine is only a stopgap. It's only a stopgap at this point in the midst of the COVID epidemic to keep people who are essentially not urgent away from coming into the hospital, which is an epicenter of the virus right now. But it's a two-edged sword, because many patients, as you know, are extremely unhappy about this idea that they come in and they have like a 12-minute visit, of which 9 minutes are a checklist being asked nourish-type questions on a general medical visit, about, do you have rugs in your house and do you slip on them, and do you have a bike helmet, and all of this nourish-type when you're coming in for a much more serious problem. So I think it works both ways. I think the human contact, which was initially blunted by the computer and the electronic record. Like I have hearing problems. I went to see my ear, nose, and throat guy. He didn't look at me, did not look at me. He spent the entire time looking at the computer screen. And, I'm a physician, I know him, this and that, and I thought to myself, even though it wasn't that urgent, just the sense of having no eye contact, no face contact, it was very, very bad.
I remember when my father was at Boston Medical Center and they were introducing computers into the rooms. My father fought it tooth and nail because he was worried about that. He said, you're going to lose the entire interaction between patient and doctor because the doctor is going to be looking at a screen the entire time.
Absolutely. Your father was very prescient on that.
So you've been kind to give us your time. I want to ask you one last question. You wrote an article a couple of years ago called "Can Brain Science Help Us Break Bad Habits?" And there's nobody who's not struggling with bad habits.
Right.
So the thesis of the article is that studies suggest relying on willpower is hopeless. The notion that you're going to will your way to lose that weight or exercise or stop screaming or losing your cool or become on time, it's not going to be willpower. You need strategies, you need science. So for our listeners, people want to break a habit. They want to change a habit. What's your advice?
Right. So it's less my advice than discovering what works from a psychological point of view. And what it is to change the context. First, to understand what triggers the bad habit, and then to change the context. And the context means basically the environment. So that people, for example, who are overeating and eating, junk food, for example, if you're bored and you move yourself into the kitchen and you're sitting in front of the donuts, you're in trouble, right? And so the question is, what you really need to do is, if you try to resist the donuts, it's not going to work. But if you find a way to divert your attention, whether it's read a book, engage in a conversation with someone, or whatever it is, that you change the context and you do it in incremental ways, that you're able to then detach from that kind of triggering. And it actually works. It seems like a simplistic solution, but it actually works for a lot of people. And actually, it's interesting that I was, when this article came out, I learn every other week with a guy who's in New York, and he was using of Yosef and Potiphar's wife, that the trigger of temptation, which happens, and that the image in the midrash is that he saw his father Yaakov's face, and the context changed. Instead of seeing the wife of Potiphar, he sees Yaakov's father, his father, and that if there's a way for us to change the environment so as not to be triggered to indulge in something which is potentially deleterious, and that's an extreme example, but that was the one that he brought up. It's a way that we can break habits which are potentially negative. People at work, this is another example, they're bored at their office and they start eating, or they start, they're smoking or something like that. And there are ways that you can change your environment. You get off your seat, you move away from your computer screen, and you engage in something that's more productive and gratifying as a substitute.
So it's not just about tackling the particular habit, it's about the triggers and the environment around it. And if you think you're going to willpower will overcome the habit, you're going to lose once you're in that.
Absolutely. As strong as we think we are, we're not as strong as we are.
Dr. Groopman, is it true that ABC television once had a medical show that was based on you?
Yes, it did. It was called Gideon's Crossing. It was radically changed. It was based on Measure of Our Days, which was the first book that I wrote, which was a very spiritual book. It has a lot of Yiddishkeit in it. It actually talks about our mishpucha from Hungary in the beginning. They did a lot of crazy things, which they do in Hollywood. They killed my wife, so she was not alive at the time of this. And it ran for 2 seasons, and it wasn't, I guess, sufficiently edgy. It didn't have enough whatever, and so it's a bar. It was passed.
Did you consult with them on the show on an ongoing basis?
I tried, but shall I say that most of the input didn't get transferred from Boston to Los Angeles.
Understood.
Yeah.
As often happens. Well, we want to thank you for your time this evening. I know the hour is getting late. We really appreciate it. We're still looking forward to when you'll join us for a whole Shabbos in Boca Raton, and the Mishpacha can have a reunion together. Will be really wonderful. But thank you for all that you do and the leadership that you show. You've inspired so many with your work, not only with your practice or your patients, but really in a much broader context, all the people have been inspired, doctors and patients alike. So thank you for all of that. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Rabbi. It's a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you in Boca. Thank you.
Be well.
You.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, boys.
Okay.
Wow.
That was fascinating.
Dr. Jerome Groopman, Dr. Jerry Groopman, Jerry, as he's known by my father-in-law. He's a brilliant man, and he is a humble man. And there's so much more to talk about. With every one of our guests, you feel like we just scratched the surface, right? I mean, the big question for him is that notion of empowering the patient and challenging the authority. Does he believe that only in medicine? Does he believe that with police? Does he believe that in religion? Does he believe that in other arenas too? Be fascinating to follow up with him another point.
Next time. I would like to say we like the New England Journal of Medicine here on this show, though, despite the fact that they've gotten some things wrong over the past few months.
We do like it. We do like it. So I want to come back to, I was telling you about Ezra Diamond and the thank you note that he wrote. And it was a beautiful thank you note, handwritten, not just copied or out of the printer. I noticed the touch. Good job, Ezra. Also, he's got the logo, because every bar mitzvah boy today is a logo. They're a franchise. They're an enterprise. Dear Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, thank you, blah, 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 blah. My family, blah, blah, blah. P.S. This is why I'm sharing it. My best part. You ready? P.S. I can't wait for the next Behind the Bima from Ezra.
Wow.
Like that. So we got listeners of all ages.
We've got listeners. I told you guys a story that apparently a previous episode, I had said how guys can go like years without seeing each other and then just jump right back into a friendship. So a friend of mine in Israel, who I went to yeshiva with, heard that. And he said, you know what? I'm going to reach out. I haven't spoken to Phil in a long time. He texted me. We've been texting back and forth, catching up on life. So you never know. You never know who you're going to reconnect with.
Oh, that's so great. Let's make a l'chaim to that renewed friendship. L'chaim to the mishpacha, to Dr. Groopman. L'chaim to please God here in Florida. Let's see things turn around. Hope all those who are ill have a speedy and complete recovery. And let's hope we continue in the right direction with everything. So l'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim. Amen. I have to admit, I did get a little emotional there when he spoke about medical innovation and how far medicine has come and how certain cancers used to be deadly and now they're some of the most treatable. That was pretty powerful. I'll just admit personally for me that he referenced that. It's something I do not take for granted and I'm very grateful for and think about all the time.
We're all very grateful for it. And I'll tell you, I was watching your face because you're a pretty private person. And, it wasn't necessary to insert it. And I was wondering and curious whether you were going to mention it. I'm glad you did because it made it so personal and so real.
Private person. I emailed the entire world when I got sick and I'm very public about it. The truth is I had a cancer that if I had gotten in 1960 or 1970 was basically guaranteed death. It was one of the deadliest cancers out there. And because of medical innovation, specifically a doctor at the University of Indiana, who I actually went out to see, they created a treatment and it's now one of the most curable cancers. And so I'm very aware of that. And I'm very aware of the miracle of modern medicine, of how far cancer research has come. And that's why when I do, when I raise money for the Boston Marathon or I do things to support cancer research, it's not just, Moskowitz wanted to run the Boston Marathon. Right. Dr. Lawrence Einhorn is his name. And I really believe in it. I really believe in it. If in 30 years, you could take one of the deadliest cancers and make it not just treatable, but one of the most treatable. So, please God, over the next couple of years, whether it's breast cancer or other forms of cancer, we'll continue to innovate and continue to progress and people shouldn't have to suffer.
What a great point he made, right? You'd think that such an accomplished physician and researcher would be the one who says, look, the science is the science. Don't be hopeful or optimistic. And he was the opposite. He was saying, we believe in hope, we believe in optimism, and we believe in progress. And that was a great example. And I will remind you at a certain meeting in our backyard that when you were first diagnosed, you were like, I could get through this and nobody will notice. I could take off work a few months and lose my hair and disappear and nobody will ever find out. Took a little time for you to come around on that one.
I'm definitely a more private person, but I do firmly believe that when we talk about calling in life, people search their entire lives for a calling, and sometimes something just falls at your doorstep and says, you know what, this happened to you. You can either shy away from it or you can use it to make other people's lives better and to help other people. Right. And again, as a rabbi, because of my life I get texts and emails and calls all the time from people. I was just diagnosed. A family member was just diagnosed. I want to talk it out with you. I want to open up to you. I want to hear your experiences. And if if God put me through that circumstance to be able to help other people, then I'm willing to go with it.
It's an amazing, amazing viewpoint. And I'll just say this, that not only are we all so grateful that you are, thank God, well, and several years out, but you celebrated a big milestone yesterday. Yesterday was Rabbi Moskowitz's birthday, and he begun his 40th year of life. He's the last year in his 30s.
Hold on.
How does it feel to be the last year?
Not 40.
So you're the 40th year of your life.
I'm 39. We don't mention the word 40 here in this house quite yet. So the truth is, I was never
someone else who lives in that house.
Exactly.
We won't mention that.
I was avoiding that.
You're not the only one living in that house.
Oh God, I'm sleeping on the couch tonight. Every year I dread my birthday. This year I woke up. I said, you know what? I'm alive. I'm healthy. I have a roof over my head. I'm embracing my birthday and I'm just grateful to Hashem. So it was really a major turning point for me. I give credit to Linda Gordon in our office, who yells at me every single year when I complain about my birthday. And she says, stop bickering. You're alive. You have a beautiful family. You have so many blessings in your life. Get over it and embrace your birthday.
Right.
By the way, I'm not sure she says stop bickering, just for the...
Yeah, no. I sanitize that for online.
I actually made a big turning point in this year. I always loved my birthday. I didn't mind it. And I loved being in my 30s. When I turned 40, I was pretty miserable. I really liked being in my 30s for lots of reasons, not for now. And I was miserable when I turned 40, and I'm now halfway through 40. And I wasn't happy.
We're closer to 50 now than 40.
No, we're not. We're right halfway through 40. But my birthday this year, which was several months ago, I thought about the people in our lives who we've lost, who never ever complain about a birthday, marking another year of life and living and being here and being with your friends and family. I realized how ungrateful it seems, and it's cute and it's shticky, and you enter these different age and units of life and 30s and your 40s and so on and so forth. But the people that we've lost, really people that are precious to us, who had so much more to live and to give and to inspire, I think it caused all of us to pause for a moment and to and to think about what really matters and never to complain about that again. So it's a good segue actually to another topic. Our community experienced, and I frame it that way, our community experienced, but a real tragedy yesterday. One of our beloved families, Tammy and Paul Clark and family, their house burnt down, totally inexplicable. We don't know the reason why, and they're investigating, but we don't know the reason. But their house was on fire, and it burnt literally to the ground. They were able to save several things. One of them, a Sefer Torah, Rabbi Moskowitz could talk more about that. They were able to get out some of their clothing and some things. But we were there yesterday, and we saw it actually. The firefighters, we saw them putting out the fire. It's very traumatic, and there's a real sense of loss. Even though, thank God, a gazillion billion times over, Glenn Galish, nobody was in the house, everybody was safe. But to look at your own house and to see it burn to the ground and the things that are in it, it's really, really devastating. So I want to bring up a couple things which are extraordinary from it. I'm sure you both have some insights and observations as well. One was, they shared with me, there were 120 firefighters and rescue people. In fact, while we were there yesterday, I looked around, I said to Rabbi Broide, I hope there's no other fire that breaks out in all of Boca and all of Palm Beach County, because it feels like every fire person.
There were a dozen fire trucks there.
There were 40 trucks, in fact, ultimately that came. They all came out, and it is extraordinarily hot in South Florida right now, tremendously hot, tremendously humid. Today, actually, I looked, and even though it registered in the high 90s, it felt like 108 degrees outside. When you're a firefighter and you wear that uniform and you are climbing that ladder, you're holding the hose, you're coming close to a fire, of these 120 firefighters, they were checking their vital signs afterwards. Many were dehydrated, many had sunstroke. And I think that we just pause for a moment to say, of course, we're grateful to Hashem, to the Ribono Shel Olam, the Almighty, that everyone was safe and spared. But we're grateful to these firefighters who put their lives on the line. And it's cute. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a fireman. And how many firemen? And the sound.
And you wanted to climb up the ladder yesterday.
Oh yeah. Brody had to hold me back from climbing the ladder and grabbing the hose. I was like, I'm in. But these firefighters were really, really amazing. But as amazing the firefighters, and they deserve such our respect and our honor and our appreciation and our recognition. I'm really, really proud of our community, because some of the firefighters commented to the Clarks. They said, you do know that you have an extraordinary neighborhood. And the Clark's like, what do you mean? You put out the fire. What do you mean? They said, do you know how many of your neighbors came out and gave us water and offered to take care of us and thanked us? So Tammy said, well, doesn't everyone do that when there's a fire and the fire truck comes and you've saved the day? So he said, do you know how many people drive right over our hose while we're putting out a fire? They drive right by. They don't offer us anything. They don't say thank you. And they drive over the running hose while putting out the fire. So big kudos.
No water coming out of the hose anymore.
It's amazing.
What is exactly.
I saw on the chat when they put out on the chat, firefighters need water. There was like a flurry of, I got 2 bottles. I got some Gatorade. I have this. People just literally mobilized, threw it at them. And really, it as you said, it's a point of pride for our community, how we come together. We can be proud.
And Paul would want me to say Boston strong. I'll say Boca strong also. Strong. Both of them strong. But it was, the firefighters are incredible. The Clarks are incredible. Their strength, their resiliency, and the community members. Do you know that last night when the fire finally subsided, was safely put out, and they needed to board up and they needed to try to salvage what was left, there were like 80 people from around our neighborhood who showed up and who did that. People have reached out to us.
I'll give him a shout out, Shlomi Lagasse. We called Shlomi. We said, Shlomi, do you have any guys who can come over? Shlomi said, it's done, taken care of. And he brought his guys over. They were boarding up. It was real Kiddush Hashem. Really.
You should have seen him throwing the water up the ladder.
Yeah,
he was. On the ladder. He was very excited. There was a news truck, and I'm like, Shlomi, you're not wearing a mask. Take 5 steps back from me. We don't need any more. We don't need any, just take a couple steps away. But he's always right there. In fact, when we told Shlomi, there's a Sefer Torah inside, he started to make a charge and a beeline. I'm like, Shlomi, there's police here. They're going to shoot you. You're running into a fire. He's like, I got it. No problem. I was in army. No problem. I go get it. I'm like, stop. And in the end, we rescued the Torah, which we'll talk about in a moment. But there were 80 members of the community there helping out last night, and all 3 of us, people in the community, have reached out and they've offered everything under the sun in really extraordinary ways that brought tears in my eyes.
People that don't even know them, people who aren't close friends with them, people who different parts of the community, didn't matter. When you hear tragedy, when you hear something like this, this is what it means to be part of a community.
We sent out an email with a meal train for people to make meals for a couple of weeks, and before the email went out, because the link had gotten
gone.
out already. The meal train was already full. People stepped up with resources. They rescued
Amazing.
a bunch of clothing from the house today, and it was already in all the neighbors' washing machines being washed. Somebody reached out to me, and I thought this was so thoughtful and sensitive, and I shared just to inspire others, that said, how many kids do they have? And I said,
Right.
4 kids. He said, I want to give X amount of money per kid, because everyone's going to help with the parents to be able to replenish some of the things, but the kids should have the opportunity to buy what they want, what they need, what they feel they lost, and give a very, very generous sum, so the kids can each have an Amazon card, go on Amazon, order what you want. And that was such a thoughtful angle, realizing what many others would do and wanting to do something else himself. And he wants to stay anonymous, but deserves a lot of credit, as do so many others. So it was really interesting. So tell us about the Sefer Torah, Rabbi.
Yeah, it's a miracle Torah, nothing short of it. You were there. They took the Sefer Torah out. The whole house was literally burnt to a ground, to the crisp, water flowing all over the house to put out the fire, and out walks this Sefer Torah. And I know when Paul was walking with it, Shlomi posted a video online. It was very emotional, and he texted me. He said, can I leave it in your house? I said, of course, to put the Torah in my house. And the Torah reeked. It smelled really, really bad. But other than the smell, it is impeccable. Not a drop of water, not a burnt piece anywhere on the Torah. In fact, I had a sofer come over and just look at the Torah. A sofer who was visiting the community. I said, do you mind just popping over, mask, socially distanced? I said, can you just look at the Torah? And I want you to see if it was impacted at all. He said, Rabbi Moskowitz, in a million years, I never would have known this Torah was just in a fire if not for the smell. And we had someone whose brother-in-law, his brother, is in the Woodmere Volunteer Fire Department. So he texted him. He said, do you see this ever? He said, unimaginably. He said, I see this all the time. We go to fires, the house is burned down, and out will walk a Sefer Torah. He says, I can't explain it. I don't know why, but I see this all the time. And it really is a miracle Torah. Baruch Hashem, the Torah is fine. It's sitting in the shul, airing out a little bit now.
Was it kept in like some sort of closet or
no? It's in its. I don't know how it was in the house, but I don't think it was in anything special.
It wasn't in a safe or anything
just
like that.
No,
I will tell you, I share the same excitement and the same miracle and the Torah and the treasure and the power of that image of the Torah making it. This is Lishitasi, this is my opinion on all these things. I hesitate to over celebrate that, because in the end, they lost their house and everything in it. Right. So yes, we're so grateful that the holiest object on earth, a Sefer Torah, a human being is the holiest object, and they were spared first of all, but a Sefer Torah, we're grateful that it made it. But I think there's a balance between acknowledging that and being grateful for that, but not over dramatizing it in a sensational way, which takes away the fact that their house burnt to the ground and they lost.
Right.
A lot.
No, but if you were there with them yesterday, you saw that anytime the firefighters brought something out. I was there when they brought out her Shabbos candlesticks. I was there when they brought out, also unbelievable, I texted you guys a picture of it, their wedding picture.
Right.
Completely untouched. It was unbelievable.
Right.
A little mud in one corner that we wiped off, otherwise completely unscathed. And yeah, their house burnt down, but any little remnants of their house, anything they could hold on to, is very, very emotional to them every single time they brought it out.
Sure.
And it doesn't make it easier. Their house is still burnt down, but it definitely gave them a little bit of nechama yesterday.
Does it make you think like you should have like a bag ready to go? Like if you're home and something's happening, I got to grab this bag because it's got my stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, let me frame it a little bit differently, because I think this is a question. Probably everyone saw this fire, the smoke, and even my son came home yesterday and he was like, was there a fire? We saw all this smoke. So everyone's aware of it. And I think one of the questions that you think to yourself, and I want to pose it to both of you, is you smell something, the fire department on its way, they say, get out of the house. You have a moment to grab something. What are you grabbing? Look around your house. I'm not talking people. People are out, they're safe. Not people. I'm talking things, possessions. What in your house are you grabbing as you're running out? What to you is irreplaceable? What is the most meaningful? What is the thing that you want to save? I wouldn't say at all costs, but on your way out in that precious moment you're grabbing.
So for sure, my wife is taking pictures, for sure, right? She'll grab our wedding picture, some picture,
right?
I'm grabbing the passports.
Passports. Interesting. Why you don't consider passports replaceable? It's probably among the easiest replaceables.
It's annoying, right?
Yeah. I mean, the truth is, I'm not, this is a broader conversation. I'm not overly sentimental when it comes to this type of stuff. I believe anything can be replaced as long as everyone's healthy. So for me, you lose a picture, you gain a picture. I'm not overly sentimental about that, but for sure, that's what my wife would grab. She would for sure grab a family
grab
picture.
pictures. You'd grab passport.
Yeah, I'd be on the flight to Israel, and she'd be looking for she'd be looking at
Rabbi
old
Brody,
pictures.
Rabbi Brody, what are you grabbing? That fancy
Right now,
microphone,
or
the headphones?
this-
What are you grabbing?
This massive hard drive that I just backed my whole life onto. Every CD, every picture. That's it.
Called the
Other than this
cloud.
little hard drive, everything else is replaced. I don't think I have anything. I mean,
How
that's where
about you, Rabbi
Simali's going to come
Goldberg?
and yell at me, but I don't think I got.
It's a good question. I've been thinking a lot about it today. If my tefillin were home, I think my tefillin, I still have a same tefillin from my bar mitzvah. I've never missed a day and they have a lot of meaning
Me
to
too.
me, but my tefillin are shul. So that wasn't the
Right.
answer. I think about my svarim right now. I'm sitting in my study and it's interesting because if God forbid my study burned down, I'd be really sad at the sense of the loss of all these svarim. But now I have an Otzah Chachma drive,
Right.
a many terabyte hard drive that has hundreds of thousands of svarim, probably all these in it. Although some of
It's
these were
not the
given to
same,
me, they were
though. It's not the
inscribed, these
same.
gemaras that you underlined and that you know, at different stages of your learning career in life, you were involved with, but you can't grab your whole library and run out of the house. So yeah, what would it be? Albums?
Right.
Albums? Is there a family heirloom? I talk about often hanging on our wall is my wife's grandmother's Tehillim. It's very sentimental, very meaningful to our family. That Tehillim, we'd grab that Tehillim and run out. It's a good question. It's an interesting thing to think about and to evaluate about our own
Right.
lives, our own homes, and our own things. What matters the most? What would really matter in that moment?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I heard a great drush actually once, Rabbi Penner, when I was in Holliswood, used that analogy for Yom Kippur. He said, you go into Yom Kippur, you carry all this baggage with you, but only you get to decide what you take leaving Yom Kippur as well. And it doesn't just work for our physical items, but you know, what would we take, and what bad habits would we drop away as well?
That's interesting. So Tammy told me that I was there, and she said that the fire department, the fire chief, when he was running in to get things, he told her afterwards, I was looking for things 20 years or older. That's why he took out those pictures of their wedding. And she said, why? He said, because anything less than 20 years old, you probably have in an iCloud, it's in storage, it's on a device, it's on a chip, it's on a
Right.
card, it's replaceable, it's reproducible. But the things that are older than 20 years, it was a different world then. It was a totally different world and we don't have access to it. And that was why that's what dictated his going in. So we were standing there, we brainstormed today, I think an interesting idea. I don't know what came of it. She was going to ask him whether they could take any of the wooden beams from the house that were left and use it to build their sukkah every year. So that when they sat in their sukkah, the flimsy, vulnerable sukkah that represents the home, they could look at it and say, this was our old home. They could incorporate their old home into the sukkah, at least for a week of a year. I don't know what came of it, but it was an interesting idea.
Isn't that what we do? Harachamanu yakim lanu asukas David hanofelas.
Yeah.
Right? Our sukkah is remembrance of the ultimate home, of Hashem's home here on this earth.
Right. That contrast between what exists digitally and what doesn't exist digitally. I mean, we were talking about it earlier because I asked Rabbi Moskowitz if you had any pictures of your dad and Dr. Groopman, and what did you say?
I Googled my dad's name. It was actually a very sad moment. I'll be honest with you. I Googled my father's name, and other than the annual memorial lecture that they have for him at Boston Medical Center, nothing came up. When my dad practiced medicine, he practiced it at a very high level, but there was no internet. You know, it wasn't as ubiquitous. It isn't. You know, we talk about our social footprint. The footprint we're going to leave on social media and on the internet. And when people Google our names after we're gone, what are they going to come up with? For people 20 years ago, there was no digital footprint. There was no internet. They weren't Googled. They didn't have that type of footprint. So it was a little bit jarring for me to Google my father's name. And actually, when I got home, I was so struck by that my father and this Dr. Osband, they actually co-wrote a book together. And I have a copy on my shelf. And I actually took the book out and I realized I never really explained its significance to my children. But other than a picture, that's, you know, in a Megillah and in a watch and tefillin, that's really like my father's medical legacy. You know, I don't have Google articles. I mean, he's quoting journals and manuscripts, but a lot of those are outdated and you really have to search hard for those. So it was a striking contrast for me between me and you, who live so much online and we're so cognizant of our digital footprint, with 20 years ago, that didn't exist at all. And they're remembered in different ways.
I think about that, you know, there's the bad side of that, like you're saying, right? So there's a whole part of your father's life which is not captured in perpetuity because it's not digitized. But there's also a downside because we pay a lot of shiva calls. It's part of our life. And you'll talk to people and they'll take out the letters their father wrote their mother during the war, when they were this, when they were that, and the letters and the letters and the cards and the correspondence and the communications. Rabbi Dr. Lamb, Zichrono Livracha, recently passed away, and all this correspondence and his library and his communications, and it's rich with, and I sometimes wonder, like, after 120, we're all,
my kids are going to have our text messages.
No, are they going to plow through our emails? I mean, when's the last time we wrote letters to one another, significant correspondence on meaningful things? We do it over email, but the emails just get lost because I don't know what everyone, we don't have time now to evaluate everybody's email system. What do you trash? What do you keep? How do you file it? But there are gabillions of emails, and there's no way my descendants are going to sit and filter through those emails to find the ones that actually have meaning, or the ones that are. So actually, several years ago, I used to print out meaningful emails and put them in a folder. And I thought the folder has cards, it has some letters, it does have, and I'm going to print it. But you can't keep up with that. The flow of email is so extreme. There's no way to keep up with it.
You must keep some, right? You must keep some.
I do. There are people who still, I mean, this is really age based, but there are people who still write a handwritten note, you know, after you've done a funeral or a simcha, and it's so deeply meaningful. I actually have a folder.
Those are
of
the
it.
best.
I have two folders. I have the love notes and I have my hate notes. The people who've written me hate notes. And, you know, it's like the old, they say, Rav Simcha Bunim or whoever's name about the two notes a Jew should keep in their pockets. So when I'm feeling high on myself, I read the hate notes. And when I'm feeling down on myself, I read the love notes. But those two folders are important to have. But it's very rare these days that people will write that note. People write email. That's the way of the world. And there are countless emails that we have. And you just wonder, is it going to get lost in cyberspace? Or is there some way it will ultimately get downloaded and captured and represent your legacy?
And how many times you go to a shiva and the person that's sitting shiva just asks you, how do they get rid of everything that the person just left? Like everything. But the clothing, the boxes,
and shoes and this, that.
No
Not
legacy.
The correspondence. If they have letters and correspondence, they cherish that. They keep that.
Not always.
I think of it all the time.
Everything. The children don't necessarily appreciate.
Tell you when I thought about it, I read David McCullough's book about John Adams, and if you read the letters that John and Abigail wrote back and forth to each other, they're the most magnificent things I've ever read in my life. And that's when I wondered. I said, what are my kids going to read them? Hey, R, you know, LOL. Like, what are they going to read it? And also, when we went to the Library of Congress, do you remember? So the Library of Congress, they file away every tweet of the President of the United States, because that's his primary mode of communication.
This is an apolitical show.
I didn't say anything about it, but it was such a dramatic shift from letters, from documents, to all of a sudden they're compiling thousands and thousands and thousands of tweets and other forms of social media. So, you know, even the Library of Congress is adapting.
You know, I'll tell you, actually, it goes full circle to Dr. Jerome Groopman, because do you know that he introduced a course at Harvard Medical School about writing? He feels doctors are not trained to communicate, to write. And even though their training ultimately is to heal, but it should also be in writing. Obviously, he has an inclination, a proclivity for that. But it does, our writing is so superficial because we're writing we communicate and we correspond on text message and WhatsApp and email. And it's very simplistic. And like you described, those, whether it was the romantic love notes or whether it was the high level communications. I remember when reading Art Scroll's book about Rabbi Moshe Sher, Zichrono Livracha, of the Agudas Yisrael, and the amazing contributions he made. And one almost couldn't have helped but think that Rabbi Sher throughout his life was already helping them write that book, because he kept the letters and he filed them, he organized them, and they really are the history of the 20th century, late 20th century, some of the great efforts that he made. So what will they have from us? It's our emails. Again, they're going to have a hard drive. Rabbi Broide, they're just going to have a hard drive. They're going to have archives of emails and emails.
Unfortunately, the reality is most things that are important to us are not going to be important to that next generation. That's just the reality.
But there will be also emails that are meaningful. You don't think, Rabbi Broide, you have emails from people telling you about how much the March of the Living or Friday Night Live
I do, and I save them in a file on my computer. Like,
do you? You save those emails separately?
What?
Do you save those emails separately?
I save the letters, yeah. Well, I have them in it. Yeah, they're in a file.
So what have you communicated to your children? If I get hit by a car, God forbid, there's a file on my desktop. You know, my father told me that
first of all, everything on my desktop is so organized. This is not like the L drive or whatever drive we have at the U drive. You could find everything very easily, but no one's going to go in.
You don't think your children are going to find what you found important to also be important? You said the next generation.
I don't know how they would find it. I don't know why they would look at my computer.
No, they're going to find it. I disagree.
They're going to find it. I have my father's watch. I have his Megillah. I know what was important to him, and it's enormously sentimental to me.
And there's nothing more significant. If you want access or connection with someone, it's with their words. It's with their communication. Of course, it's with their things, but it's also the Rambam writes that. That's the notion. We know HaKadosh Baruch Hu through science, through the Grand Canyon, the Swiss Alps, but we know him most through his word, his diary, which is the Torah.
Well, so let me ask you a question, Rabbi Goldberg. Are you aware of that when you write an article, like you just wrote an article, which I thought was great, right? Are you aware that in 20, 30,
Where can they
40
find it?
years,
Where can they find it?
Rabbi Efrem Goldberg.org.
Thank you very much.
When
You can find him in Moskowitz's articles on aish.com, by the way.
Blah, blah, blah. No, but are you aware that like in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that those writings, those articles exist for posterity?
Yeah, no, I do. I actually have notes here. I've been meaning to bring this up several episodes, and we're gonna have to push it off yet again, which is, what's your big audacious goal? What's the thing that you want to do, you want to conquer? And just to give, I guess, a little bit of a Vorspeise to when we'll have this conversation, I'm ready. For many years, I said why I'm not writing a book. I'm ready to write a book. I want to make a contribution. I want something that will last. I like the popular audience articles I write, whether people see them, don't see them. The shelf life of them is so short because the so to say Jewish news cycle switches so quickly. But I'm ready. I'm ready to write that book. But I think about these articles too. I mean, this is the legacy we're leaving our kids. When they read it, when they think about it, this is what we value. This is what we stand for. This is what we care about. This is what matters. This is what matters. So I think
but I'm saying most people are not writing books. That's very few individuals writing books. Very few.
Do
people
you think
David Mueller wrote a book? Benji Tripp wrote a book. Trajectory.
I got it. I love Donna and Jackie. right here. I say Jackie. I mean,
no, but they wrote it on purpose. They wrote it as a spiritual legacy to their children.
Right.
But I'm saying it's not many. It's.
And by the way, I read David's book. It's phenomenal. No, it's great because it's the best way to do it if you can.
Here's a takeaway for us for tonight, because we're actually at the end of our time. Time continues to pass quickly on Wednesday. It's at 9 p.m. But the takeaway is, maybe I've never seen anyone promote this. Anyone to be mindful as we're living digitally, what we preserve. Like you said, the notion that I'm creating email folders, the ones that are meaningful and I would want my children to read, and everything else, right? So, because when our kids go through our emails, they'll be like, the egg salad at the shul stinks, or whatever the program, or can you get back to me? Can you meet Thursday at 3? Can you whatever? And then in there will be the most beautiful correspondence, a meaningful correspondence, a correspondence where you were dreaming and aspiring and working to change the world. And it'll get lost in the egg salad and the meetings and the countless conference calls and the whatever. So maybe we should all be doing a much better job. Maybe there should be a system of setting aside the things for posterity that we would want, whether it's in a cloud or whether it's on an actual device. I'm going to invent an app. I hope nobody's listening and takes this. I'm going to invent an app which is basically preparing for after you're gone. How to basically prepare so that you can be remembered. No, because in Evernote also is mixed in everything. The recipe of the beef jerky that you like. I mean, whatever. Your driver's
you can
license.
Make a folder.
It's all mixed in.
Yeah.
No, the question is there a dedicated space, and do your kids know about it? Do your friends, do the people who know you know about where to find? Because it's no longer like, oh, go through that shoebox. Oh, look what you found. All the love letters, all the correspondence, all the communication. So this digital
Tell you what, I
world
can't wait for
offers
some psychologist to go through all 3 of our emails, the thousands and thousands of emails that 3 of us have sent back and forth, and to psychoanalyze them.
Now, you know what they're going to do? You know what they're going to do? And with this end? You know what our children are going to do? They're going to listen to all the old episodes of Behind the Bima.
Behind the Bima.
And they're going to be like, they thought that was funny? They thought they had a sense of humor? Losers, my fathers were. Anyway, on that note, say l'chaim to the firefighters, first responders, l'chaim to the Clarks, troopers, incredible. L'chaim to the beautiful community that stepped up in a way, made a big Kiddush Hashem. Really so proud to be part of it. And l'chaim to Dr. Groopman for joining us tonight. L'chaim to Oracle. Sal Abadi, our dear friend. Hopefully no one ever needs his services, but if you do, Sal is heartfelt, he's sincere, he's genuine, he cares, he's reliable, he will show up. 561-212-7911, 561-212-7911. Sal Abadi is the man. Oracle. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay holy. Until next week, this is Behind the Bima.